Maggie Gyllenhaal is here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh my gosh, this film is a tour de force. It's the only way I can describe it. And critics are saying it's one of the most daring and original films of the year. I have to ask, of course, what inspired you to reimagine this classic story?
Well, I don't know how recently you've seen it, but you know, the original.
Last night.
no, but the original.
Oh, the Elsa Lancaster. So I grew up as a movie, film buff, Universal Monsters nerd.
Yeah.
So
you know it.
Yeah, I know.
So you know then that the bride,
yes,
is in that movie for 2 minutes.
Right, at the end, basically.
And doesn't speak one word.
She just screams in horror.
And she's amazing. I mean, she's formidable,
yes,
right? She makes it very clear how she feels. But when I finished watching that movie, I thought, I want to know more about what's going on with her. You know, what's going on in her mind after having been dug up from the ground to marry someone who she doesn't recognize and, in fact, who she's never met.
Right.
I felt curious and I wanted to think about it.
Well, that's the beauty of this film, right? Which is that in the book itself, the bride is an idea. The monster, much as Frank in this film, asks to create a companion, but you center the movie and you imagine the opposite. In the book, she is not even brought to life, right? But in this film, you imagine that she lives. So what interested you in expanding the idea of how her life would be if she had lived?
Well, I think it was an open canvas, you know? It was a place where I could contain some of the things that were on my mind. And, you know, the things that were on my mind at the time when I started to think about it, I mean, there were lots of them. but one of them is this idea that, I believe that there are aspects inside of each and every one of us that is monstrous. And you can spend your life running from that, or you can turn around and you can shake hands with your monster. And so this movie is about that. That's when things, in my experience, start to get really interesting.
Yeah.
And so this is a celebration, I think, of the ways in which all the parts of us that don't fit into the box that we're told we're supposed to get to finally break out.
Well, so that's the other thing that I love about this, right? Which is that in addition to this process of self-discovery, and for us as viewers, understanding perhaps the monster that lives within, you explore femininity, you explore rage, identity through the experience of this resurrected woman. So how did approaching those emotions, especially rage, which is something that we all feel, we all have it within us, but everybody in society, for the most part, we try to tamp that down. How did you explore rage in a way that felt truthful rather than just symbolic?
Well, I'm not interested really in symbolic. I am interested in iconic. You know, I knew I was dealing with iconic characters. I knew they had to have an iconic look and yet be very, very human the whole time and recognizable to us. Because if my monsters are human in the way that they feel and act and present themselves, well, that then gives us permission to let the monster inside us out, you know? So rage, I agree with you. It's in all of us, outside of us, inside of us. I think, in a way, I wanted the movie to be, like I said, like a celebration of lots of things, including rage. Letting the whole spectrum...
Celebration of it.
Yeah. Letting the whole spectrum of the experience of being alive in the world right now be okay.
Oh, I love that. Let's talk about Jessie Buckley. I mean, I'm a huge Christian Bale fan. I'm also a big Jessie Buckley fan, and I'm a fan of, Annette Bening. I mean, you have so many wonderful actors in this film. Penelope Cruz, Peter Sarsgaard, Jake, your brother.
Yeah.
I mean, who plays Ronnie Reed. But she gives a performance, a tower. I mean, she's going to be nominated for an Oscar. I have absolutely no doubt. You worked with her before in The Lost Daughter.
Yeah.
Was there ever any other choice for her to play Ida?
You know, when I was writing, I really tried to have no one in mind.
Is that right?
Well, just because I didn't want it to limit at all who the character could be.
That's so funny, Maggie, because I often hear for writers and directors that when you start to sit down with the screenplay...
Actors come to mind?
Right.
It's true, but I just tried to push them out, so that it could be anyone. But the truth is Jesse did keep coming to mind. And I waited until I was absolutely sure that I had completed it. And then I let myself imagine anyone at all. And the truth is I can't imagine anyone else. And I couldn't then either. So I just went to her.
Oh my gosh, I love that. How do you give notes to a Christian Bale or any actor, but especially one like Christian who's been performing and acting since he was 10 years old, Empire of the Sun? How do you approach giving notes to an actor who's so respected and who just knows what he's doing?
Yeah. I mean, I think most actors, having been an actor myself for so long, are looking for freedom, looking for permission to let anything happen, and are looking to be pushed, are looking to be stretched. And you have to figure out for each actor, what is the language to speak to them in? And it's different for everyone. It just so happens that Jessie Buckley, I speak to her in the language I speak to myself in. That's not true for almost anybody else. But Christian, it's funny. I used to usually I whisper to actors, just go up and whisper little things in their ears. Yeah, because it's not for everyone to know what we're thinking about. But sometimes with Jessie, I would just yell things out at her because we know each other so well. I'd be like, go back to the beginning and this, and I never did it to Christian. And one day, I would always just go whisper to him and let him finish the scene. One day, Christian came up to me. No, he didn't even come up. He sort of sat in front of everyone. He was like, hey, Maggie, will you yell at me too? And so, so I did. So sometimes, I think usually it's best to wait until the end of the scene and have a little private interaction with each actor. But sometimes you're in the middle of something and you just gotta jump in and re-shift things, throw some fire at it,
Wow. So the aesthetic of this film, let's talk about that. First of all, I can tell that I'm a huge movie film buff, and I can tell that you are too. When I watch Jake as Ronnie in that scene where we first see him, I'm a big fan of those old Grand Hotel, those movies from the 30s and 40s, those big MGM musicals, right? He seems to be, it seems to be taken from that aesthetic. How were you imagining that when you thought about the character for your brother, Ronnie Reed, and how is it my sister and I, we can't talk to each other without descending into 5-year-olds again. How is it directing your brother?
Well, first of all, the Ronnie Reed character, who's an old-time movie star, that came about because I realized at a certain point in writing that I wanted Frankenstein's primary relationship to be with a movie star, someone that he has an intimate relationship with, but who doesn't know him at all.
Right.
And so then that's where the Ronnie Reed character came from. Jake and I grew up watching all sorts of movies like that. I find them so joyful, so delightful. And yet I find those 30s, I'm thinking Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, they are all fantasy. And my film is the opposite of that. My film is about all of the messiness in love, in being alive, just in being a human being in the world. So bouncing my lovers, my monster lovers, off of the kind of fantasy movies of the 30s just puts into relief how, I guess, the value of letting the whole spectrum of feelings and experiences of being a human being into your life, instead of just the fantasy.
Well, one of the things, I think everybody, when I watch a film, I often feel like I identify with certain characters. And I love the scene where you do see Ronnie and you see Frankenstein in the movie theater. Because that's how I felt watching Fred Astaire in Top Hat, right? With Ginger Rogers. You say, oh, I could woo the girl. And I just love that he doesn't consider what he looks like. He just identifies with that character. Is Frankenstein, this sensitive soul, wrapped in this bubble of rage?
Well, first of all, I think Frankenstein, when he's in the movie theater, feels he can relate to Ronnie Reed. And so much of the rest of his life, he covers his face entirely. He's totally alienated and alone. He's terrified. So it's only in the heat of the moment of being in the movies that he feels that that way. I think one of the things that's amazing about Mary Shelley's novel is that, look, monster mythology, monster movies, monster novels can be used and are often used as like a place to throw the monstrous inside of us. Get it out of me. I'm gonna put it in these monster stories. But Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is different. I think Frankenstein's monster is so human, like you say, so smart. He like learns French just by hanging out in a barn next to some people who are speaking French. He finds a suitcase full of philosophy and reads it and like is a philosopher. He's so vulnerable and he's so lonely. And, you know, Mary Shelley says in her book, I'm malicious because I'm miserable. You know, he's abandoned. So he, yes, has all of these human qualities that we can relate to and also does totally monstrous things, both in that book and in my film. You know, we might feel, ooh, there's a little monstrous thread of rage, of whatever it is, but most of us don't bash people's heads in.
No, we do not.
You know?
We go to movies and watch other monsters do that.
But yeah, my Frank is, I think, very human.
This is an incredible film. Thank you for sharing it with us. I have no doubt this film is going to win many, many awards because it is really a remarkable effort. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.